All right, let's get started. My name's David Disraeli with Disraeli News, and this is our first broadcast from Israel. My guest is Sean Perkins, who has been in Israel for 10 years and whom I've known for 32 or 3 years, whose parents were at my wedding, and we support their efforts in Israel every month. And I was astounded when we were talking last week, Sean, about the information that we get here in America versus what you get on the ground in Israel. And that's watching every station, reading, every website that I can. So one of the things that we talked about was my concern that so many children and innocent people in Gaza, Palestinians, if you will, are caught in the middle of something where they're getting killed and maimed, and just having to, wrap my head around that is a struggle. And if it's a struggle for me, it's probably a struggle for a lot of people. And I think Israel is going to catch a lot of heat for humanitarian damage, if you will. And what you shared with me when we talked, I thought was extremely insightful, and things I did not know about the people in Gaza and Hamas. So why don't you give us a brief on kind of the backstory behind all this?
David, thank you. It's good to be with you, and I'm sure your listeners have and viewers have seen a lot of carnage on TV and social media. A little bit about Hamas. Briefly, Hamas is a religious terrorist organization, and it overtook or replaced the Fatah, considered a secular organization. They're both terrorist groups, to be exact, but one is secular and one is religiously, fanatically motivated. Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007. They were voted into power. Just to underscore that, there was two different elections where they won the majority, the pyramid building, and they've held power in Gaza ever since. They've not had any elections since, and they have ruled the people of Gaza with a brutal hand. Hamas is.
Wait, did you say there's not been any elections since?
That's correct.
So there's no way to oust them? There's no way they can be removed by the Palestinian people that voted them in originally?
Exactly. They are a totalitarian regime. They've been there since 2007, and the only way to remove them is by vote. They literally use the Palestinian people as human shield. I would say, in my language, they view the Palestinian people as a natural resource and a commodity to be spent, and that's how they treat the Palestinian people. They also infect the people with propaganda, especially the younger people. It's been that way for the last 17 years. And you've probably heard, many people have heard in the media that they're just like ISIS. They are Sunni Muslim, and they are exactly like ISIS. They've been beheading people since they've been in power, but it's not been broadcast to the world. Recently, this attack garnered world attention for the first time, and the reality of the videos and photographs that have been disseminated throughout social media has, I guess you could say, bypassed the media's spin that used to protect Hamas. And I mean, all of the mainstream media would favor Palestinian regimes and the people. And this, if I could say it this way, this leak of information has shown who Hamas really is. They are brutal, just like that.
Okay. I had heard that basically Gaza was the result of a peace deal. I think that was in '05 before Hamas. It was the Palestinian, um, basically the PLO, but I think it was called the Palestinian Liberation or the Palestinian government. They lost power to Hamas, but Israel gave them that land and provided schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. And they basically uh, trashed the place or didn't take care of it. I mean, I'm assuming that coastline means you could actually have resorts there, right? You could have tourism there and revenue.
Exactly.
So,
As of what? Sorry, go ahead.
no, I just don't understand why they would take a gift like that and turn it into a garbage dump.
Newsweek recently said that Gaza could have been Singapore, and they certainly had the potential. Gaza was a garden. It was one of the nicest places in Israel before it was turned over to Hamas. When it was still considered part of the state of Israel, um, it was where the nicest beaches were, the nicest resorts were. This is where a lot of people went to spend the weekend on vacation. The Gazans there used to have nice cars, nice homes, and nice jobs. And the older population of Gaza, people say 50 and 60 and up, they remember the good old days when they had good jobs in Israel and nice cars and running water and electricity. The younger people, say 30 and under, they don't know those days. They grew up under the brutal hand of Hamas, going blackouts, no fuel, no water. A lot of people think this is Israel's fault, but it had to be done to protect Israel from a regime that has vowed and pledged itself to Israel's total annihilation and the total annihilation of the Jewish people and Christians, I might add. It's in both the Quran and the Hamas Charter that Muslims, that they're going to be, okay, it's in the Hamas Charter, which anyone can look up online in English and see the language that they use.
Well, wait a minute. Why would Israel continue to sell power and water and allow commerce in and out? It's confusing to me. I don't live there, but they have to have permits to go to work. They're sort of like temporary refugees that get to come and go if they have a permit. And then you see Israel selling them electricity, and now they turned it off. Israel's continuing to effectively support someone that wants them eliminated, and that seems to be, very inconsistent. So, is that because it's the lesser of all evils, or what?
There's two things to think about. First, there's an enormous amount of international pressure on Israel to give the government what they want. But more importantly, the struggle between Israel and Gaza is not between Israel and the Palestinian people, between Israel and Hamas. The Palestinian people, there's many Arabs, there's over 2 million Arabs who live in Gaza. And within the state of Israel, there's a very large population. They contribute every day to daily, to the workforce, to Israeli society. They vote, they're educated, they go to school. And once upon a time, Gaza participated in that commerce. Israel is a generous government and nation and has been over the years, much to the, I guess, confusion or maybe even dismay to the liberal media that disagrees with this narrative. But the history shows that Israel has always extended uh, a desire for peace with its neighbor. And Hamas uses the people as human shield and a platform from which they can launch rockets upon Israel. Unfortunately, the votes of the people of Gaza have consequences. They voted Hamas into power, and they've been under the brutal regime of Hamas ever since. But even up until the day of the attack, people who had work permits were coming to Israel. Now that was on a Shabbat, but the day before, people were permitted to enter Israel through the Rafah crossing and go to work, just as they have been for 17 years. And the only time that's been interrupted is when we had attacks from Hamas. And this is free. The electricity and the water, Gaza does not have the money to pay for this. Israel has been allowing that to go to them, and they're just accumulating a bill that they can't pay. But Israel is still providing and has consistently for 17 years. The only time it's been interrupted is when we have huge rocket barrages or some kind of, you know, a war exchange with them. The last 2 years, they've all been what we call military action, but this is an actual war. So all the fuel, water, food supplies, everything was cut off as an effort to lay siege to Hamas, not to afflict the Palestinian people. In fact, as we speak, there's a huge effort going on in the northern part of Gaza right now for Israel to allow as long as they can make sure that it doesn't reach the hand of Hamas. And Israel has pledged to thwart that effort if anything does reach Hamas. But they've tried so hard to make sure that the Palestinian people were not targeted by dropping leaflets, sending SMS messages and robocalls to every phone, informing residents when a bomb is going to drop on their building, 24 hours notice, or at least sometimes a couple of hours notice. People have time to get out. What's happening is Hamas is preventing their exit as much as leaving or using bulldozers to make roadblocks to prevent their exit. Recently, there was a bomb on the road south where Israel told people to flee. They did begin to flee. Um, Hamas told everyone Israel was bombing those cars that were fleeing, but they didn't expect that somebody would have a helmet cam from, I think it was a scooter. I saw the video. And it's clear that the origin of the bomb was from a flatbed truck. It's not Israel bombing anybody. It's Hamas bombing their own people to make Israel look bad.
Wow.
This is this is the regime we're dealing with, and it's impossible to negotiate or make peace with a regime that has vowed your annihilation. It's impossible.
Absolutely. So I presume that the reason they haven't gone in on the ground is because there's still hope that they can either find, locate, and rescue the hostages, whatever that number is, or reach a deal with the Palestinian Authority. Is there any first of all, is that true? And my second question is, does the Palestinian Authority that's still communicating with Israel in the West Bank, do they have any influence over Hamas, or do they have any contact with Hamas? They're all Arabs. I assume they call each other.
They are not friends, but they do work together. They both view Israel as a common enemy. And so when they want to hurt Israel, they will work together. But when they're trying to reach their own objective, they are not friendly to one another. Hamas and Fatah are, for lack of a better word, enemies or competitors, you could say. Hamas wants to dominate all of the Palestinian area, and Fatah rules most of the West Bank. Hamas rules Gaza. Um, now, could you repeat the first part of your question?
Do you agree that the reason Israel's been parked on the border for 3 or 4 days now and not moving is because they still think they can rescue a few hundred people from the hands of Hamas that have been taken hostage?
It appears from what we're seeing in the local media and from the military intel that they released to the public that Israel is offering water and electricity and humanitarian aid if if Hamas will release the hostages. They're demanding, you know, their electricity to be restored and water and humanitarian aid. But Israel is saying, we'll give aid, but you have to let the hostages receive aid and you have to let the civilians receive aid. And Hamas is not allowed to receive any. And if they can establish that and release the hostages, these things will be restored. So at this precise moment, President Joe Biden is in Israel and has met with Netanyahu, and they've talked and discussed things. I don't know exactly what the next steps will be. We're still waiting to find that out.
Do you think there's a ceasefire possibly, or is Israel only going to be satisfied if they round up every single terrorist?
I personally don't expect a ceasefire. Hamas, I would say, is doomed. I think Israel is committed to their absolute destruction, if possible, down to the last man. And if not, at least to the effect that Hamas is no longer able to be a terrorist entity ever again. So Israel is committed to that, absolutely.
So I heard yesterday a news network, I think it was maybe CNN. There's actually factions in Hamas itself. It's not necessarily one group that's all coordinated. There's 16 different flavors of Hamas. Have you heard that? Is that true?
I personally haven't heard that. It wouldn't surprise me though. Islamic Jihad is another terrorist entity in Gaza, and they also are not friends with Hamas, but again, they work together. As that old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they tolerate each other, and they both compete against each other for dominance in Gaza. Hamas definitely has the majority as far as, if you could call it leadership. But there's factions there too. You have two Sunni terrorist entities, both funded by Iran. They both want dominance in Gaza. They don't like each other, but they both work simultaneously to attack Israel. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's factions within Hamas. I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, let's transition here to Q&A. I wanted to try to keep this to 15 minutes as close as I could, and then we'll do another one early next week or on demand if there's breaking news. In the chat box, you can type in your questions for me or Sean, probably Sean, and I will also let you know how to support this organization in Israel. Our foundation is tax exempt 501c3 here in the U.S., based in Austin or Cedar Park, which is a suburb of Jerusalem. I'm here, but my heart's in Israel, so I'm a dual citizen. We will provide 100% of what we receive to tzedakah, which is in the humanitarian. Why don't you give a 60-second commercial before we go to Q&A on what you guys do in Israel?
Our organization is called Tzedakah International. We call it TCI, TCI Israel. TCI, tzedakah, first of all, means righteousness, but in this case, it means charity. And we're a humanitarian aid and platform where people can give exactly for things like this. When there's a great need in Israel, we've already just noticed that we're going to receive 70 large cartons of sleeping bags of food that will be distributed to the people who are displaced from the Gaza border communities. We're also going to be giving aid to soldiers. This is everything from hygiene kits to medical kits to food and snack and things like that. So we're going to be helping people, and not just working alongside the other unknown organizations in Israel that provide care both to the displaced and the victims of the attack, and also people.
Do you have an estimate of how many Israelis were displaced by that one day rampage?
Exactly sure the exact number. I know Sederot was evacuated, and some of the towns around Gaza were all evacuated. So Sderot, in Hebrew they say Sderot. This town is about 30,000, and they were evacuated because the army is going door to door to make sure there are no terrorists still hold up in apartment buildings or whatever. I know that they did that in other kibbutzim, blizzards, around the southwestern part of Israel. So my guess is 45 to 40,000 infants.
Say the last part again.
I would say easily 35 to 40,000. Sderot is 2001, and many cities were evacuated. Some of these towns are small. Kibbutz might only have 200 or 300, 400 people, but when you combine them all, I would imagine easily not some 40,000 people, probably more.
Okay. Well, looks like we're out of time, and there's no question.